Okay. Hi, everybody. This is the new episode of Propulsion Labs, the episode number 4, dedicated to bootstrapping and fundraising. Today, I've got a really stellar lineup. I will do a quick round of introductions. Let's start with Dana. Dana is a general partner at HeavyBeat. Dana, do you want to give a little bit of introduction about yourself, please?
So we're a venture firm that invests specifically in developer tool and infrastructure companies. We've been around since about 2013, and we invest in 10 to 12 companies a year, pretty early stage, and we often write the first non-angel check. For myself, I'm an ex-journalist and marketer, and I've worked with companies like Pivotal Labs, Heroku, and Code for America. And over the past 9 years at HeavyBit, I have worked on about 55 commercial developer launches. Some of the companies you've heard of, Sneak, Tailscale, Mux, and others are still in stealth, and hopefully you'll hear about them soon.
Awesome, thank you. Next, we have Josh Larsen. Josh is the CTO at Ghost Security. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Co-founder, CTO at Ghost Security. So we're only a year into our startup journey, but this is my third startup. So here at Ghost, we're building a platform that provides application and API security visibility for companies that are building apps in the cloud. My first two startups, also in the cybersecurity space, were actually bootstrapped. So this is a bit of a new experience in that Ghost is a venture funded company. So experience on both sides of that coin.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Irina Nazarova, the CEO at Evil Martians. Irina, please give a little intro.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Victoria's colleague at Evil Martians. We are a product development consulting company working primarily with venture-backed startups, focusing on tools for engineers, designers, and other professionals. And I joined the company 6 years ago, before that, I started actually as a C++ engineer, and then moved on into investment banking as a research analyst. So and then I started a couple of startups. So it took a while to get here, but I'm pretty fascinated with the things we're doing, also supporting, investing in the internal tools at Evil Martians.
Thank you. Finally, we have Mike Perham, founder at Contributed Systems and the author of Sidekiq and Faktory. Mike, please give us a little bit of an intro as well.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm the founder of Contributed Systems. I'm focused on background job infrastructure for enterprise applications. So whether that's Ruby and Rails apps or apps written in other languages like Python or Go, my company provides background job systems in Sidekiq and Faktory that anyone can use with their applications.
Thank you so much. So before we dive into the questions, into the discussion, I want to kind of preface this debate that's been out there over the years that founders face, when they just start their startup and later down the road. So the debate is, do I choose the bootstrap route, or do I go and seek some funding from venture capital from VCs? So Mike here is an example of a bootstrapped company, a successful one in that. So maybe we can start with Mike, and let's dive into your journey a little bit. Tell us maybe a little bit of the pre-story of your company and your take on fundraising. Have you ever considered fundraising for your company? And, just share your philosophy with us, please.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really all about your own personal vision for what you want to build and how you want to build it. I had a pretty strong vision for what I wanted to build and the goals that I wanted to achieve. And I found that taking investment wasn't necessary for what I wanted to do. I could do it myself as long as I had enough time and runway to build. And with open source, the costs of building are so low that you can effectively do it oftentimes in nights and weekends, so to speak. And so Sidekiq really was born out of my own experience building background job systems for Ruby apps, and gradually realizing that I could build a better one. And so that's what I did. Sidekiq, I spent about 6 months of nights and weekends building this, documenting it and writing about it in my blog. So, sort of taking people on a journey with me as I built it, and sort of marketed it and educated people about what it could do better. And within a year, I had pretty significant traction and take up in the Ruby community, and it's only gone up since then. So it's definitely a personal choice, though, if you want to take funding or not. If you do have several people that you want to work with, if you do find that you do need a source of income while you're building it, then taking a seed or a round could very well be appropriate. But again, it's all about your own personal path that you can see to achieve your own goals.
So if we have a founder that has their mind on this bootstrapping route, what would be your advice, at early stages? I mean, outside of motivation and financial.
Right. Well, you need to be realistic about what you can achieve without money. If you can't afford to hire people, or if you can't find collaborators to work with you on this, then obviously you need to extend your runway and realize, well, it's going to take me months or years to build this without that investment and without being able to pay more people to collaborate on. But open source does really drop the cost of finding collaborators, because it's so easy to create a repo on GitHub or GitLab and blog about it, and then have like-minded people kind of join you who are interested in participating. So, there's so many different directions that you can go these days with software. But at the end of the day, software is really cheap to build. You just have to have a strong vision for how you want to build it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now let's talk a little bit about the difference between bootstrapping and fundraising. So let me jump to Irina here. Irina is the CEO of Evil Martians, as I mentioned, and what we've done over the years is we've supported commercial open source products and open source projects within the Evil Martians, but also Irina is the founder in the past as well. So Irina, what do you think is the main difference between bootstrapping and fundraising when it comes to specifically developer tools?
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. Yeah, to me, the things Mike said, they resonate with me a lot, but also keep in mind that, at least for me, Mike is someone of a legend and a genius. And this is really the perception of like how the community perceives the work that Mike is able to do, without the team. On his own, and this is the work that is again also earning millions of dollars of revenue, which is just mind blowing, right? It's pretty unique, right? Let me say that this is pretty unique case, I think. But he mentioned that he was doing it and blogging about it. Keep it in mind, right? This is important. So I'd say I agree that this is a personal choice, and it has to come from the personal sort of belief system, what you want to do in your life over during the next 10 years or something. And I'd say not every business is, 99% of businesses are not a good fit for a VC-backed model, right? And this Dana could tell much more about it, I'm absolutely sure. I'll just say that this, for me, when we are looking at our internal projects and thinking if we want to invest in them, we're thinking about things like total addressable market, like the market that this tool operates in and can, approach. And also we're thinking about the business model, because, not every business model in commercial open source will allow you to scale the company efficiently. For example, we have support and consultant model, which works for evil Martians. In a way, we do consultant support based on sort of the requests for our open source, but we're not going to scale this business model, right? But yeah, and also the attitude. This is the attitude of the founder. This is all boils down to this. So if you have everything in place, if you want to make this, I'd say, risky bet at something huge, you can go the VC route. But if not, maybe bootstrapping is the way to go.
Thank you so much. And now kind of like we talk about, the genius kind of factor in a developer tools founders. Dana, can you tell us a little bit more? What does an investor look for in an opportunity in developer tools space? How do you how can you tell whether the founder has got it? Can you share your kind of view on this with us, please?
Yeah. I think this is like rules for me, I guess, more than it is for like everybody out there in the world. But, I think in addition to having a strong product vision and frankly, some momentum and traction around like an open source project or something like that, I think where founders have a real competitive advantage is just having past experience or success with specifically the user that they plan to serve initially. That is different than the customer that they hope to sell to. So usually with companies that we work with, there's a developer kind of champion within an organization. This is all kind of marketing speak, but the reality is that like if you can bring together a passionate group of developers who have been forgotten by the tooling that they have sitting in front of them, you can probably offer them a point of pride, build a good set of best practices with those developers, and then effectively kind of crowdsource something that looks a bit like a movement moving forward. This is bigger than just like a commercial success. It's more about building a set of approaches that actually allow people to do their jobs in a better way and improve the lives of developers. And I think that's, that comes out via like word of mouth and people just being very excited for you. So this is kind of where open source projects and early communities are really, really interesting to us.
Thank you so much. In the previous episode of Dev Propulsion Labs, we kind of discussed how community, specifically for developer tools, matters a lot. It can make or break the product, right? And I really like your idea in the beginning on having previous experience in that industry. Really helps a founder, and I think Josh is one of those founders that has built on his previous experience, right? So, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with fundraising for Ghost? And maybe have you ever considered bootstrapping? I know that you have bootstrapping experience in the past, but for Ghost Security specifically, share your thoughts on that. What kind of conversations do you have with your co-founders about it?
Sure. Yeah. So bootstrapping wasn't really part of the plan this go around, just based on sort of the problem that we were trying to solve, the sort of team and the resources that we felt like we were going to need to assemble to go after this problem. I think to Mike's earlier point, knowing how much you can bite off, how big of a problem can you solve, that was something that we were. My experience personally and that of my co-founders is in the sort of B2B, or call it the enterprise space, rather than consumer. So the way that you build products and the way that you take those products to market and who you're selling them to is very different than if you're transacting with individuals, on a one-on-one basis. So that was kind of, for better or worse, that was our familiar kind of territory, the markets that we were used to and familiar with doing business in. So we had a bit of an idea from our past experiences what it was going to take to build a business that could do that. So bootstrapping wasn't really on the table in this particular case, even though it was how I started my first two companies. And I was very intrigued when this group started to come together, because of my first company was actually, we built everything in Ruby. And so I actually came across Sidekiq in 2014, and I probably owe a significant part of the success of that business to Mike directly. It was a platform that was sending a high volume of emails in the background, and we're using something else beforehand, and found Sidekiq, and it was just such high quality software that I'm a bit embarrassed to say we didn't even buy the commercial version. I'm not sure if it was available at the time, but the open source version was so good. We were we were able to push hundreds of millions of jobs through it. So I've always been a huge fan of Mike's work, and I think that might be something that I think Mike left out of his explanation of kind of how to decide if you can go down that path. Mike is well known for the quality of product that he's created in Sidekiq and in Faktory. And so I think knowing what your own capabilities are and whether or not you need to bring in co-founders is an important part of that equation too. So I think having that exceptional level of skill and talent makes that outcome more likely. But to answer your question, that wasn't part of our plan from the beginning. That was something that we set out to kind of aim fairly high. We figured that the total addressable market was fairly significant, but again, targeting larger businesses, enterprise scale, if you will. So we intended to kind of build a larger team from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And what impact did fundraising have on your role as a CTO? How has it impacted the roadmap for the product?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the big sort of, the justification, the reason to raise funds is really to build the team. So the vast majority of those funds are going towards paying salaries for highly skilled and capable engineers, which is my priority first and foremost, is to put the right people on that team that have the right combination of skills and experience to build the software behind the platform that we're building and the goals that we're aiming to achieve. So, I mean, it was a pretty clear trade-off there that it simply wouldn't have been possible to kind of bootstrap or self-fund at that scale. So we're still early stage, right? So we're only 20 people, but that's that far outpaces what most people would be comfortable bootstrapping or self-funding, at the early stages at least.
Thank you so much. Dana, you interact with a lot of founders every year. What, in your opinion, is the difference between Bootstrap and fundraising in terms of the go-to-market strategy? And what do you see are the differences in the product development roadmaps for those different types of strategies?
Yeah, I mean, because of the business that I'm in, companies want to raise, right? Like all the companies that for the most part, that I'm working with are trying to raise at that particular time. I think it's a matter of sequencing oftentimes, though. Those that bootstrap in the early days, that take a little more time around their product discovery, on building out sort of an initial MVP, as well as getting some design partners or a community involved. Those folks tend to retain more ownership of the company. And they also retain control, which means that they can make some really good decisions in the early days, do a bit of experimentation prior to kind of pouring fuel on the fire, which is effectively what like capital unlocks, right? It is this ability to hire more engineers. It is this ability to, in many cases, like serve an enterprise customer if that's what they need. And I think the other is, if you have a very competitive market and there are a lot of other people kind of coming up with a similar approach, it accelerates your ability to, get to that market quickly. It's not for everyone. And I think if you can bootstrap for as long as possible, it's probably going to benefit you. And it's probably going to mean that you'll have more control and ownership and more to offer like future executives or future employees down the line.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So now let's talk a little bit about commercial open source. So Evil Martians has invested into commercial open source projects over the years, and I want to ask Irina, as almost as an investor, how do you make sure that Evil Martians as a company manages to invest into commercial open source while staying sustainable and kind of like profitable as a business? And also, if you could let us in a little bit on how do you evaluate opportunities between different open source projects, like which one has the potential to become commercialized and which one doesn't. So give us a little bit of that philosophy, maybe.
Yeah, lost my sound for a second. Yeah, so first of all, this is not unique. I think almost like every consulting company that is successful will want to build their own product and will try to invest from their profit, from their balance sheet in building those products. It's like happens everywhere. It fails most of the time. That's the problem. So you end up spending all the profits on that, which is exciting and amazing to build your own thing, right? So what we decided to do is to approach this with a little bit more strategy and a little bit more precision. So the strategy is this: we are leveraging what we have, which is access to engineering teams that we work with, 20 to 30 engineering teams that we work with as consultants, like Ghost Security, for example. So and we learn from this experience what tools can be useful and which tools will be useful to improve the productivity of those teams. That's the goal, and that's our, let's say, those are the types of products we're investing in internally. So we are not doing anything we want. We're just doing this. So the strategy is to have, again, the portfolio approach, where if you're every new business is super risky. Any new business is super risky. So investing in just one or two doesn't make any sense from the sort of risk profile perspective. So our goal is to invest in a number of projects every year and then help them sort of graduate. So we just had Image Proxy Image Proxy just incorporated. They raised a small round and they sort of graduated Evil Martians, which is amazing. Like our first little, like small success, okay, in this. So this means that, and the company is amazing. They're growing. They have amazing clients. This is this gets us excited, but it's not that we will invest all of it in just this one, right? It has to be a portfolio approach. And in order to do this, we also have this internal reporting, internal financial reporting that helps us understand where we're going and how much money we have to spend and stuff like that. So this has to be done super carefully. And also we are thinking about the incentives for the founding teams. So this is a little bit counterintuitive for the company that is building something, internally. Pretty often companies want to retain a large share in ownership of those internal products, and we are not doing this. Our goal is to have a small share of ownership in those products as Evil Martians, and then the majority is owned by the founding team, by the authors, because there's a long road ahead, and they need to have this ownership. Like Dana said, that you want to the founding team to have more control, more ownership, and more every chance to be successful, right? We don't want to undermine those chances. We want to increase those chances as much as possible. So, so this is what we're doing. And the way we're looking at it is definitely looking at our open source, including things like we have an open source font or we have POS CSS. So not all of them can become successful commercial products, but we noticed if they have some traction, right? If there is any, again, excitement about the product in the community, and also kind of how the authors are promoting them. Are they excited about them themselves, etc., right? Are they blogging? What are they doing? And so if there is this traction, we are ready to. And if there is a strategy, we don't yet know which way to go. Like, is it going to be bootstrapping or is it going to be VC backed? We can just start with a small investment with certain KPIs. We'll try to build out something that can be sold, that people will want to buy. And we'll just try to do this kind of small investment and see if people will buy it. So this is what we do. So those are the things, like just traction, how people are promoting the authors if the authors are promoting the product, and then if you have the product strategy, even if we don't know the details yet, right? If maybe we don't know if it's going to be bootstrapped or VC-backed yet, so we'll try it out.
Awesome, thank you. I really like the part about being motivated about sustaining, because we're talking about commercial open source here, and I think that Mike, I've seen it in Mike's speeches before, like the fact that to sustain open source for a long time, you really need to be motivated. Otherwise, the open source burnout is a very kind of common thing, and it happens when developers support open source for free for years, and it's a lot of work, frankly. So, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about your business? How do you manage to do it all by yourself? Have you ever considered hiring somebody else? Because it's a one-man show, but you nail it. So share the secrets.
Yeah, I'm kind of infamous for being a one-man show. So I have no employees. I started the business explicitly with the constraint that I never wanted to hire. And once you constrain yourself like that, it becomes very liberating. Now you can set all sorts of policies in order to maximize your own time on the product. In my case, one of the very early policies I had was that I was going to be credit card only. No manual invoicing. I'm not going to harass a company because they haven't paid their invoice and manually email back and forth. That's not my job. If I can't charge your credit card, your account goes away and you lose access. So that's an example of where I explicitly chose a policy because I realized I don't have the time or the wherewithal to hire somebody else to deal with billing. I'm just going to outsource it to Stripe and be done with it. and you're also choosing sometimes to say no to customers in that regard. If a customer requires a lot of manual handholding or wants me to do pre-sales demos or wants me to customize the product for them, I say no. I have a strong product vision, and I want customers who who dovetail with that vision and are willing to just use the software like the community wants to, like my vision, and take it where my vision wants it to go. So, again, it's all trade-offs, it's all constraints, and it's all your own goals and vision for where you want your product to go.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's a lot about setting the expectations, right? Like if you're clear about your intention, if you're clear about your, like as you said, certain limitations, right? People will not expect it from you, and therefore they will accept it as the kind of like gameplay, right? This is the rule, these are the rules, and we're just playing by them. So, and I think that ties like really heavily with the culture in the bootstrapped companies. And maybe, Irina, can you share your insights on the importance of culture in bootstrapped businesses? Specifically talking about, like evil Martians in this scenario, right?
Yeah, I'll specifically talk about developer tools, I think. Because this is what we do. Again, we won't be able to build any other businesses, I think, other than like those. But yeah, I think for culture is something that sometimes you're always building it, even without realizing it. I think Mike has been very conscious about the culture he's building in his business, which is amazing, because some other person would think, well, it's just me, I don't have to set any rules, I'll just do whatever I want to. But it's a different thing when you approach this, like Mike just explained, right? Setting the rules. So one of the things that I think help, that maybe is a requirement even nowadays for the developer tools businesses, is this idea that the engineers are also those who promote the product. And this might be also, well, not everybody agrees with that, but this is my belief, that there is no one else who could promote a product for engineers better than the people building it. And it's important that it's not sort of isolated from each, like this marketing, the technical marketing is not isolated from building the product. It's essentially the same people. The people building the product will need a certain infrastructure to do the marketing, but only they can provide the sort of, at least the raw materials, right? The interest, why they build, what they're excited about, right? It's like should be in the culture in the early on. I think if you're building a product for engineers, that engineers are ready to share, ready to talk about their own work and sort of build in public, right? To a certain extent, to different extents, right? Sometimes people super open, sometimes less, but at least some share of this, has to be present. And also, it's amazing when companies can be authentic while doing this, right? This is we discussed this with Victoria before, how it's so cool when the company is like maybe already 20, 30, 50 people, but there is some kind of funkiness, some authenticity in the way they market their product, right? And that's what that is a good idea to keep it and try to kind of foster it. This uniqueness, this authenticity in what you do, how you publicly speak about your product. Yeah, that's it. And I think like always, like in every business, try to build partnerships within the company, with the clients, with the partners. Try to build partnerships with everyone so that there are always two sides and people know that it's their job to do half of the relationship. Even if it's a designer and an engineer, or engineer and the product manager, it's always two-sided relationship, and this is what we remind ourselves at Table Martians, right, all the time. Let's try to build partnerships. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I really loved your point about being authentic, and I think it's really, I'm a big fan of Superbase. I read their memes like every day on Twitter. But I think that like Ghost Security is another example of like being really authentic, and you can see it if you go on their website, even like read the about story. It's going to capture your hearts. And I want to ask Josh about kind of looking back at your experience fundraising. What advice will you give another young founder in the cybersecurity space, and perhaps what should a founder look for in an investor? Because partnering with the VC is kind of like being married to somebody for many, many years down the road. So how do you choose an investor that would complement your strategy?
Yeah. There's a lot there. A couple of questions I think rolled into one. So I think the first caveat, I try to be careful about providing advice about this journey, because I think luck and timing plays a much larger role in the process than most people would admit. So that's a big piece of it. Serendipity, being in the right place at the right time, maybe being surrounded by the right business partners, the right colleagues, being in the right industry, not the one right industry, but in an industry where there's a certain level of excitement, there's a large enough addressable market. Those are things kind of beyond your control to some extent, but they play a part nonetheless. As far as the things that are more in your control, I think there's a few things kind of looking back on this experience for us. One of which is sort of thinking about the really identifying the type of business that you're trying to build and whether or not it's investable. I think Irina made this point earlier. And being honest, which is kind of hard to do from a developer, from an engineer's perspective. Oftentimes our vision, as the magnitude of a problem may seem more significant to us personally because it's something we deal with. But taking a step back from that and thinking about what is the real addressable market here? Is this a smaller scale kind of niche tool or solution, or is this really a widespread problem that's going to be investable and not just investable in the sense that you can get someone to give you money for it, but investable in terms of the metrics that investors are going to likely care about, like a multiple, a return on their investment at a multiple that they care about, that they're actually going to get a return. So being honest about that, I think, is important, and that might actually help make the decision about whether bootstrapping or raising money is in fact the right path there. And then, assuming you've made that decision to raise money, I think there's a couple other elements to making that a successful pursuit. Ideally, if at all possible, trying to raise money when you don't necessarily need it. So you've got sufficient runway. You're able to maybe bootstrap early on so that you're not in a position of desperation where you can't feed your family if you don't raise money. That's not typically a good position to be in terms of leverage and getting favorable terms for an investment. And then when you're in those conversations, I think it's critical to have a big enough vision that, again, at least tells that story. You might not have it completely figured out, but you need to give investors a reason to be engaged and intrigued, that there is actually a big enough upside to hold their interest. I think most investors would probably tell you that having an unfair advantage or being able to identify an unfair advantage that you have is important, right? Whether that's your own domain knowledge or experience or a trade secret, proprietary technology, exceptional knowledge and skill, in a particular area, something that sets you apart from everyone else in that space. And then, I think to your second question, the second part of your question about finding the right investor, I think that's a good analogy. It's like a marriage, it's like a long-term relationship. Ideally, it's a mutual fit on both sides, right? It's not just kind of silent money or passive investment. You've got a partner in your investors that either knows the space, knows about how to go to market in that space, so has some experience kind of solving some of the pain that you're likely to run into. Or maybe they have specific go-to-market channels that they're deeply ingrained with. So some kind of overlap there where there's a mutually beneficial arrangement there, I think, is important.
Thank you so much. And just to expand a little bit on the addressable market point, we have to be realistic, and even for the bootstrapped companies, it's important to know the addressable market. And here I want to ask Mike, when an engineer, a founder, makes a decision to kind of transform their open source project into a commercial project, what advice could you share with them? What kind of, some intel on how to make that transition successful?
That's a really difficult question to answer because every project is different. The levers you have to pull and the leverage you have to monetize are different for every project. Irina was talking about their image proxy project. That's a kind of a very standalone service tool that you can build and monetize, like just as a metered subscription, right? Every call you make costs you a penny or something like that. That's a very easy billing model and monetization model to understand. But not all software is like that. Sidekiq is sold as downloadable software, so people subscribe to it and they run it within their own four walls. And it uses a model called open core, where your core is open source, but the features that I sell on top of that core are commercial and closed source. But that's not appropriate for every open source project either. Some open source projects are just libraries, and they may be niche libraries such that you don't have a lot of leverage to monetize there. So it really is important for that developer to do their own research, to understand what types of commercial open source projects is my project kind of like, and those monetization strategies, which might work for me also. But like I said, it's a really tough question to answer unless we're talking about a very specific project, and we can sort of dive into the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think Irina shared this analogy with me some time ago. A commercial open source project is a cure, not a vitamin. Like, it has to be so vital to a certain kind of like part of the process that it makes a lot of sense for a company to invest in it, right? Otherwise, it's just seen as a part of the ecosystem, like it's something that's taken for granted a lot of the times. And one of the examples of that is Post CSS, that is very well known, but it's not seen as a separate product that could be paid for. So thank you for that. Now let's talk a little bit about growth. So my question is to Dana. Dana, can you please share an example of a developer tool startup that successfully leveraged the VC funding to drive growth, and maybe what kind of key factors contributed to their successful use of this investor capital?
Yeah, I mean, think things that come to mind to me, I mean, companies that come to mind to me are probably like Launch Darkly and Sneak, I would say, did a really good job being super capital efficient in the early days. They were very careful about runway, and they really hired and spent pretty cautiously prior to finding product market fit. And so what that meant is that the founders of these companies spent the first couple of years as the core marketer, as the first salesperson, as the first spokesperson, as the first support person, to the point that like Edith from Launch Darkly would often get notes back to the entire company, like in the reply all, and it would be like, who's this Edith? She's the best support person I've ever seen. Like, amazing implementation and support. And she's just like, I'm the CEO of the company, but I'm trying to ensure that you have the best possible experience until I can actually productize it, right? And so this not only allowed her to ensure that she was like, could find her working revenue channels prior to spending money. She could figure out what the shape of the org design looked like what types of marketers, what types of salespeople, what types of support people she should hire. But it also did create a culture of, that feels more like a bootstrap company than a Google type of, here's all of the snacks and a climbing wall type of situation.
Awesome. I want to stay with you for a little bit longer. Can you share, as an investor, can you share kind of like current trends that you see on the market that excite you, maybe particularly in developer tools space, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about a lot of stuff. I think this is just like a really cool and creative year, and we're, I think I would be remiss to like not mention that there's a ton of excitement around LLMs and AI and ML ops. But we're seeing these like large incumbents invest in ML ops and tooling super quickly, and then smaller startups are emerging to meet the needs of these companies. So developer tools suddenly become more important. You put that in addition, like you compound that with the fact that there are even large companies are experiencing rifts or being very careful about how they're spending money. So developers become this sort of like productivity lever for all of these companies. And that's kind of, when there is a light shined on developer companies, that's like exciting. It means that there's like some competition from other investors who are actually like paying attention. It means that there's competition amongst startups, which builds for a better like end user experience. Yeah, I guess the core, I mean, I wrote down a bunch of categories that you guys were talking, that as we were talking before, but open source enterprise adoption means that teams they now have to build like a formal policy. So it means that there are all these new types of tooling around compliance and governance. And there's these like sort of policy as code and compliance as code. In the security space, that's like a really exciting place, because data now is so valuable and also so scrapable that there's need for new security and identity and access management tooling and privacy tooling. And so I get to see those pitches, and it's just like a whole new generation of security companies. And then observability and incident response, there's still this importance around performance and uptime, and so there we're seeing a new generation of monitoring and DevOps companies. Really, I think like the most exciting thing about it is that there is like a lot of creativity in the air, and like Mike said, it's really never been cheaper and easier to run a company. And because these large companies are seeing dips in value, there's also never been more available senior like a talent than ever before for startups, which is very, very cool. And then I guess the last thing, which I sometimes hate and love, is that code generation has never been more accessible, at least for like the really boring things that nobody really wants to work on, right? So that all of this means that there's like this new, super accessible, exciting space for everybody to work in. And I know that there's like there's a lot of like extenuating external factors that also make it very, very hard, but it's less lonely, I think, as well to build a startup when there are this many startups proliferating. So I think you're honestly a bad investor if you're not excited to look at new companies and new types of technology. Like, you're never going to do your job properly or deploy capital properly. But I think it's exciting right now because it's never been cheaper and easier to build a startup. LLMs and AI are in theory making that easier, but we're only starting to see people spend in those areas. And it's pretty Wild West, and it's pretty cool to see this much competition happening. It just means that there will be likely better products will emerge out of this.
Thank you. Indeed, I mean, I share that excitement for developer tools. I think we're witnessing the surge, like developer tools are becoming the new it industry. And I'm not sure about commercial open source. Maybe yes, I don't know. Mike, do you have any kind of like view on what are the current trends in the open source and commercial open source space? What do you see happening in the developer tools?
Two things that I've seen from my customers a lot of in the last year or two has been a fair amount of focus on the process of supply chain verification. Like they really want to be careful that they're not downloading gems and packages from the various package managers that have malware or some sort of trapdoor, whatever you might want to call it, that can then be used to own their infrastructure. The other thing I think was really kicked off by Europe, but is a real focus on application data and security with SaaSes. Like if you store any user data in your SaaS, I mean, I've had customers send me 80 to 100 questionnaires where I have to fill out, exactly how every employee, like processes around employees and security and thankfully I can usually reply and say, my software, I have downloadable software. I don't provide a real-time service, so I have none of your data, and therefore I don't have to answer any of these questions, thankfully. But if you store data, boy, that is radioactive, and you have to be a lot more cognizant about your processes and workflows these days.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, that's an opportunity too. I'm sure there are many businesses that actually thrive on that and streamline that process. And to kind of like second Dana's ideas about the existing economic client, I think it's really interesting because there is so much talent, there is so much creativity that people have to employ to actually overcome this difficult time, like meaning economic turbulence, uncertainty on the market. So we actually see layoffs, but we also see very creative strategies in overcoming and kind of like surviving this unlucky trip. George, do you have any kind of advice to founders in the existing economic clients, in the existing economic climate? What do you specifically do to keep yourself afloat? What's your kind of strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's this might be a better question for Dana. I think from our perspective, we're not actively trying to raise money, so it's not affecting us in the immediate term. We have thankfully a significant runway for a while, but I think I can give you the perspective on at least what we're hearing, on the street, so to speak. There's a lot of I think tightening around venture activity in a broader sense. That may be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We see a lot of commentary from VCs about how VCs are tightening. So, not sure which came first. But on the other hand, we're also seeing large, sizable deals close in, 30, 40, 50 million range. So there definitely is still activity. I think what's definitely changed, objectively has changed. Some of the, insane valuations have corrected to a significant degree. Some of what I would consider more kind of fad areas like crypto and NFTs and Web3 kind of plays, where it was really a stretch to kind of think about what's the real business use case behind this business. I think those have been tempered to a significant degree. But solid businesses that have a significant TAM and are solving a real problem, especially in my world, so to speak, in the cybersecurity space, there is still definitely investment activity happening. First-time founders might have more of a challenge than maybe they would have a year ago, 2 years ago, where investors were really looking for opportunities to deploy capital and maybe were a little more willing to suspend disbelief or buy into more ambitious visions. So I think things are contracting and correcting, but I don't know that the sky is falling necessarily. But again, maybe Dana has a better perspective on that from her side.
Yeah, I love the word correction, and I think Dana used it in our conversation before. Dana, do you want to chime in and maybe give a piece of advice to founders that are trying to raise right now?
If you don't have to, then maybe don't. I mean, the reality is, yeah, there has been a correction, right? Like in the last couple of years, there was a huge influx of capital into early stage companies. Like we had never seen more on paper unicorns than ever before. And the reality is a lot of those companies, if they raised way above where their revenue was at, now they have to play that catch up. And this is in an environment in which there is a lot of customer churn, in which there's not like a lot of like expansion revenue for these customers to spend, right? And so teams do have to be seen to be like very capital efficient, so they can look at rifts, they can get rid of their office. Like there's not really only so much you can cut to continue moving forward. I think that's further exacerbated by the fact that like two of the best startup banks in the Valley who are willing to lend to early stage startups are like no longer in that same position, right? So with the closure of FRBN and then SVB, like there's not as much lending happening to very, very early stage startups. So I mean, I guess my advice, and this is the same advice I would have still offered to early stage founders if they were thinking that they would want to fundraise in the future, is get as close to product market fit or some type of validation and proof amongst amongst users, and then go try to raise. Mm-hmm. This isn't something that is like, it is an incredibly privileged position to get to to get to do that if you are not profitable, right? Like you probably have some cash in hand or some opportunities that others maybe wouldn't have, but it does mean that you have more control and ownership, and it means that you will be able to offer more to your employers down the line in the future if you do want employees.
Okay, thank you so much. And finally, I want to talk to Ira about, reflecting on the past maybe like 5 years. What kind of shifts do you see in that bootstrapping versus fundraising debate?
Yeah, I think most of my knowledge comes from the clients, like Mike's. So we both of our companies work with those tech companies, and a lot of them. So it's funny how trends change, and they change dramatically. So like something like 3 years ago, if you remember, if you were bootstrapping, you were not raising amazing huge rounds. It was hard to even talk about yourself, like about your company in public places. I mean, it was like everything people discussed seemed to be like the rounds of financing. This was, I don't know, you go to TechCrunch and you read about those rounds of financing, and that's what people are excited about. Although, well, this is not where the magic happens, actually, right? The magic happens where the technology is built and the product is being used. But I think now it changed, and now we see even VCs advise everyone to almost behave like learn something from the bootstrapped companies, let's say, right? Learn about like running lean, maybe leaner, and maybe doing some of the things that the bootstrapped companies have to do anyways, right? We have to survive, rely on our own capital, on our own resources, on our revenue. And now many companies won't be able to raise during the next couple of years, maybe. And they have to do the same thing. They have to rely on their revenue. So, or the capital they have already. These trends are definitely changing. But I think it's important to also think about this, that none of those trends sort of they're smaller than the lifetime of the company or the lifetime of your professional experience, let's say, as a whole, your career, whatever. So trends change and things go out of fashion or become fashionable. The role of the founder, I think, is the role of the entrepreneur is to have is to sort of ignore many of those trends and stay true to the other things, right? For example, Mike mentioned that, well, Sidekiq Pro is not a SaaS company and not a SaaS business, right? And it's a on-premise software. And we have AnyCable, which is also an on-premise software. And I'm also replying to client emails like that with like all the questionnaires about the security and stuff. Yeah. So, but I can say no. It's great. So, yeah. Maybe if you believe that the way to build certain part of software is not the SaaS model, the right way is to have the on-premise, run it on your infrastructure, and it's going to be better that way for some reason, right? And you can just ignore the trend, ignore that the SaaS is like everything people do, it seems, and do what you think is right. Maybe you won't be able to raise capital as quickly, but, well, I think still sort of stay true to what you want to build, because if you're raising capital and not doing what you want, I think the run is so hard. This road, this path is so hard. It's so long and so hard that maybe you won't be able to make it, because if you don't want it for real, so to say.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that we see a lot of that kind of trend for sustainability in running a business, right? Now that many companies are forced to be sustainable, they're forced to be mindful of their spending, of their strategy, their kind of like hiring. I think like staying true to the core idea that you had originally when you created your business has become kind of like vital, instrumental in many businesses surviving. So I want us to play a little game to finish this episode. No. I want us to, imagine ourselves to be fairy godmothers or godfathers for a second and think about all the early founders. And I want to ask each of you to give one piece of advice that you would think could change somebody's, strategy, perhaps. So maybe let's start with Mike. Mike, what's one piece of advice you would give an early founder? No pressure.
Yeah. I think for me, the ultimate key for success was being my own customer. I had experience as an engineer for the previous 5 years of working in this space and using the existing solutions. And so I could build a better mousetrap because I had been working with mousetraps for the last 5 years, right? So to speak. So you cannot replace customer value and understanding the customer's viewpoint. You'll never get a business successful unless you have something that provides value to your customer. And the best way to do that is to really understand emotionally your customer's pain and to build something better for them.
Awesome, thank you. Dana, what's your advice for early founders?
I would definitely say that actually knowing your initial user is very important, or being your initial user is very important. I've worked with a fair number of companies. I think I'm like less interested in some immediate sign of commercial success because I'm seeing companies that are so early. So you kind of have to be that type of founder who is capable of like making heroes out of the other developers that you're working with, and there kind of needs to be a royal we around it, right? So I think Jamstack is more interesting than Netlify. I think DevSecOps is more interesting than Snyk, for instance. These are like much bigger trends or ideas within software development than just like a company got some money type of thing. Because money isn't news, and money isn't a sign, or at least money from VCs is not an immediate sign of success. It's just that you've built a partnership, and now you need to move towards sort of like venture style exits, right? So I guess that's where my main advice is. I think just find people, investors who actually also will understand what your vision is, and will try to help you achieve that, whether that's through unlocking additional capital at times when you might need it. But I think that's the least important. I think the more important part is, do they have any idea what the hell your product actually is, how you plan on scaling that, moving towards the future, and can they unlock the right network for you to be able to hire the right people, like go into your next round, find the correct, interesting customers for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Irina, it's your turn. The magic wand. What's your advice?
The magic wand. Yeah, the magic wand reminds me of something we ask our clients, like if we can wave the magic wand and what you want is completed, how do you know it's good? Yeah. It's similar, but let me maybe. I don't want to say the same thing, but as Mike and Dana, but I think sort of connect to a certain audience. And I feel it's so much easier to build a business when you have some audience that recognizes you, maybe because of they've been using the open source that you've built, or maybe they've been reading the blog posts that you were writing, or something else. And if you are excited about this audience, if you are sort of in a certain, if you have this kind of deep interest in them, maybe not in love with them, but all the time necessarily, but some of that as well, when you're really interested in someone and you want to connect with them and you hear each other, right? So you understand this audience, these people, maybe you're one of them, but it's more than just you, right? It's maybe different people, diverse people, more than just you. And if they also recognize you for some reason, maybe you're already doing something useful for them, maybe then once you start commercializing, building some tools for them, first of all, those tools are going to be much, better. You have better intuition of what they need, but also you have better access to your audience. So I think it's like a lifetime's mission, maybe, that there's this audience of people. There are people that interest you, that know you, and you are interested in building for them. And this is your lifetime's mission of building for them. And it may be a series of companies, a series of products. All those things change, right? But this sort of asset, your connection to certain part of the world or audience remains, and it can grow, let's say. During the whole sort of lifetime of your career or like all of it. So start building this relationship.
Cool. We went real philosophical for a moment. I think it's important to align that mission, that's kind of like the ultimate way to become sustainable and maybe even happy, with your job, with your product. Josh, what's your advice? The magic advice.
As I was kind of listening to the other answers, I thought of a slight twist on the question, maybe thinking about advice I would have given my earlier self, my younger self. And it kind of the theme keeps recurring. So it's something I think about often. And that's, especially from a, engineering perspective or a developer's perspective, if you're thinking about going down this path of being a founder, whether it's bootstrapped or raising venture capital, I think an uncomfortable but necessary thing that we should do earlier is thinking about sales, and thinking about sales as a forcing function to think through things like, how are you going to go to market? How are you going to find your customers? How are they going to find you? What are those channels going to be? Can you realistically determine, like, what am I going to sell this thing for? Which maybe is less important on a individual B2C type business, but on an enterprise business, if you're selling to other companies, what do you anticipate selling for? And you have to kind of pull these levers and figure out, do I have a selling price in a large enough scale that's going to be a meaningful business, a meaningful amount of revenue, or can I charge enough at a smaller scale that's a meaningful amount of revenue? So it's something that, I think earlier in my career, I didn't understand the importance of, even though I went to business school and I was a finance major. I don't know. I didn't internalize that until later in life. The technical side of me still would rather be writing code maybe than thinking about sales. But that's a good, I think, forcing function to think about, is this an actual viable business beyond just something that I'm interested in and passionate about? Is it actually a viable business? So I think the sooner you start thinking about that and finding the real and sometimes difficult answers to those questions, I think the better off, the higher the likelihood of success will be.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. We see a lot of technical founders that get caught in that trap of, they love to build, they love being engineers. And sometimes they get caught in that mindset, and it's really tough to get out of, and sometimes you need a real strong wake up call to get out of that mindset. And I've seen it's not an easy process for many engineers. So thank you for sharing that advice. I want to end this episode on this note. I think it's been really great. I want to thank you all. I think I feel really like to be in the room with all of you, even though it's a virtual room. I really hope that some technical founders and perhaps not technical founders will see this episode and will learn something new and maybe get inspired, to take whatever path that feels authentic to them, without having those pressures of, raising capital or bootstrapping or whatever, at the end of the day, as we kind of determined today, it's important to stay true to your authentic path, and keep your core user in mind, your user persona, because at the end of the day, we're building for somebody. Who that person is very important. So thank you so much, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.